In every corner of the world, there are stories untold, dark tales of the unknown lurking just beneath the surface of our reality. From the quietest towns to the desolate places forgotten by time, evil hides in the shadows, waiting for the unsuspecting. These are the stories of the ordinary and the unimaginable, where fear takes hold and the lines between reality and nightmare blur. Between the light we trust and the darkness we dread, there is a world unseen by most, a world where terror becomes real.
I was part of a Russian Spetsnaz unit deployed in Syria back in 2016. Officially, we were sent to assist in stabilization efforts near Aleppo, but anyone with half a brain knew our real job was to clear out insurgent strongholds and secure key positions for our allies. We were trained for combat, for guerrilla tactics, for the brutality of urban warfare. But what we encountered one night in that desert, there's no training for that. My name isn't really important, but you can call me Yuri. I'm not using my real name. Not because of some military protocol, but because of what's been haunting me since that night in Syria. I've learned that names have a way of sticking, and whatever we stirred up out there, it clings to the things that make you real. So Yuri will do. One of the guys in my unit, let's call him Sergei, was the kind of soldier you'd want next to you in any fight. Steady, focused, always the first to crack a joke to cut the tension. But this wasn't a situation we could joke our way out of. By the end, the man who could stare down anything with a smirk was whispering prayers under his breath, the light gone from his eyes. That's when I realized we'd walked into something far worse than any battlefield. This is what happened during that mission, and why some things should stay buried. Our orders were straightforward. Secure a section of tunnels in a remote village a few kilometers outside Aleppo. Intelligence reports suggested the tunnels were being used by rebel forces to smuggle weapons and supplies. The tunnels were ancient, part of a forgotten underground network that predated even the oldest maps. The locals wouldn't go near them, claiming they were cursed, that they'd swallowed entire search parties over the years. We, of course, dismissed it as superstition. Before we headed out to the village, we passed through a nearby market, a dusty, sprawling place where locals sold everything from fresh produce to rusted tools. The sun was blistering, and the market was alive with the sounds of haggling, but there was an undercurrent of unease in the air. People glanced at us out of the corners of their eyes, whispering in low tones as we walked by. It wasn't the usual looks we got from locals wary of foreign soldiers. This was different. It was like they knew something we didn't. As we moved through the narrow, crowded lanes between stalls, I noticed a few vendors discreetly packing up and leaving, their eyes darting nervously toward us. One old man sitting cross-legged on the ground selling spices muttered something under his breath as we passed. Sergei, who speaks decent Arabic, caught part of it. Something about the watchers in the dark. When Sergei asked him what he meant, the old man's face went pale. He shook his head furiously and made a gesture like he was warding off evil, refusing to say anything more. Further down the market, we passed a butcher's stall. The smell of raw meat and blood hung heavy in the air, but it was the butcher's eyes that unsettled me. He didn't try to sell us anything. He just stood there, staring at us with this hollow, dead-eyed expression, like he was expecting something terrible. His hands were trembling as he sharpened a cleaver. When I met his gaze, he looked away quickly, mumbling a prayer under his breath. It was clear we weren't welcome there. As we left the market, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us, something more than just wary locals. There was this tension in the air, a sense that the place was holding its breath. Looking back, I realized that the market wasn't just uncomfortable, it was a warning, one we should have paid attention to. We arrived at the village just before sunset. The ride there had been rough, bouncing along dirt paths in our armored trucks, the Syrian desert stretching out on either side like an endless sea of sand and rock. The air was thick with dust, and the heat was relentless, making the sweat drip down our backs even though the sun was starting to dip below the horizon. As we got closer to the village, the radio chatter died down, leaving us in tense silence. It was like we all felt it, the way the landscape seemed to shift from just being deserted to something wrong. Even the breeze, which had been steady all day, fell dead. The village itself was nothing more than a handful of crumbling stone buildings, most of them bombed out, their roofs collapsed in on themselves. Metal beams stuck out at jagged angles like broken bones, the kind of place that had been abandoned long before the war reached it. Everything was coated in a layer of sand, and the shadows stretched long and sharp as the last light bled from the sky. There wasn't a soul in sight, not even stray dogs, which in a place like this was unusual. No birds, no wind, just the creaking of old doors hanging on rusted hinges. We moved through the village in silence, scanning every corner, our boots crunching on loose gravel. We'd been given coordinates, but it didn't help much. The entrance to the tunnel wasn't obvious, hidden somewhere among the rubble. We split into pairs, combing the area while keeping our weapons ready. No one trusted the calm. It was Sergei who found it first. It was half buried under debris, at the back of what used to be some kind of storage building. We cleared away the loose stones and sand, revealing a jagged hole in the ground, framed by cracked, worn stone. The entrance was barely wide enough for a single man to squeeze through with his gear. The edges of the hole were lined with old, weathered bricks, slick with moisture, though how anything could stay damp in the middle of the desert was beyond me. It was as if the tunnel itself had been sweating. A faint, stale breeze drifted up from below, carrying a smell I couldn't quite place, like rot, mixed with something metallic, like rusted iron. We stood there for a moment, staring into the darkness below. It was strange. Usually you can see at least a few meters down a tunnel like this, but our flashlights barely made a dent. The blackness seemed to swallow the light whole. The longer I looked, the more I felt like the tunnel was waiting for us, almost beckoning us in. Sergei muttered something in Russian under his breath, probably a prayer. He was tough, but I could see it in his eyes. He felt it too. One of the younger guys, Dmitri, tried to crack a joke to cut the tension, but it fell flat. None of us laughed. There was something in the air, something that made you hesitate, like stepping on the edge of a cliff. But orders were orders. We dropped a flare into the hole, and I remember watching it fall, its light getting smaller and smaller until it just blinked out, as if it was swallowed whole. No sound when it hit bottom. Just silence. That was the first real sign we should have taken the hint and walked away. But we were trained to push forward, to follow orders no matter what. So we suited up. Sergei went first, squeezing into the tunnel with practiced ease, and I followed close behind. The entrance was tight, but it opened up after a few meters into a steep incline. The walls were rough stone, but polished smooth in some areas, as if something had been moving through here for a long time. The deeper we went, the colder it got, unnaturally cold for the desert. And that smell, the one I noticed earlier, it only got stronger. I could see the tension in everyone's movements. We've been in tight spots before, but there was something different about this place. It was like the air itself was pressing down on us, getting thicker the further we went. The tunnel twisted sharply, leading us deeper into the earth, and that's when we started hearing it. The faintest echo of scraping, like nails dragging over stone, coming from somewhere up ahead. But there was no turning back now. We pushed on, even though every instinct told me to turn back. The air grew colder with each step, and the scraping sound got louder, more deliberate, like claws dragging across stone walls, waiting for us to get closer. Sergei, usually the most unshakable among us, was muttering something in Russian, his hand gripping his rifle tight. "Something's wrong here," he kept saying. I could see it in the others too, the way their eyes darted around, the way their movements became tense. It wasn't just fear, it was like the tunnel itself was squeezing in on us, an invisible weight pressing down from all sides. The tunnel twisted sharply, narrowing, and the walls changed from rough stone to smooth concrete, polished and reinforced, like someone had repurposed this place long after it was first dug out. And then we saw the symbols, etched deep into the walls, spiraling and looping in patterns that seemed to shift when you weren't looking directly at them. They weren't just scratches, they were deliberate carvings, and they glowed faintly with a sickly green hue. The closer we got, the more those symbols seemed to pulse, like they were alive. Sergei stopped dead in his tracks, his face pale. He reached out and traced one of the symbols with his fingers, then jerked his hand back like he'd been burned. "These aren't markings," he said, his voice trembling. "They're warnings. My grandmother used to tell stories about symbols like these, about places you don't go." None of us knew what to say, but I could see the unease spreading through the team. Sergei wasn't one to get rattled easily, but whatever these symbols were, they were making him nervous. We kept moving because, well, orders are orders, but it felt like we were walking into something that had been waiting for us. The passage narrowed again, then abruptly opened into a large chamber. The walls here were different, reinforced concrete, lined with rusted metal supports, like this place had been modernized at some point. But what grabbed our attention were the old surgical tables scattered around, covered in dust and dark stains that I didn't want to think too much about. Broken equipment lay piled in the corners, cracked monitors, rusted saws, things that looked like they'd been left behind in a hurry. In the center of the room was a massive metal trapdoor, bolted shut with iron bars that looked ancient, corroded but still solid. Those same symbols were carved into the door, deep and jagged, like someone had tried to seal something inside. The air was freezing, and that smell, burning metal mixed with sulfur and rot, was almost overwhelming. Sergei stepped back, shaking his head. "We shouldn't open it," he whispered, his voice trembling. "This place, it's a prison. Something's been locked away here for a long time, and we're about to let it out." We had to secure the area, and that meant opening the door. So we pried the bars loose and forced the door open. As it creaked open, a blast of freezing air hit us, carrying that same rotten stench, only stronger now, like death and decay mixed with burning coal. The door led to a steep set of stairs descending into pitch blackness. We shone our lights down. That's when we heard it, the whispering. It wasn't in any language I'd heard before, just a series of breathy murmurs that seemed to echo from all directions at once, like dozens of voices speaking in unison. Sergei's hand was shaking as he held his rifle. "It's not human," he muttered, almost to himself. "It's something else. Something that shouldn't be here." We descended the stairs, each step taking us deeper into the cold. The passage opened into another chamber, larger than the one above. The walls here were lined with cracked mirrors, warped and twisted, reflecting distorted versions of ourselves. The reflections moved just out of sync with our real movements, like they were watching us. In the center of the room was a pit, glowing faintly with embers. The stone around it was scorched black, as if by fire. Scattered nearby were more surgical tables, but what lay on them wasn't just old equipment. It was bodies. Charred remains twisted into grotesque shapes, as if they'd been burned from the inside out. The faces, or what was left of them, were contorted in agony, mouths frozen mid-scream, eyes blackened hollows. These weren't just corpses, they were failed experiments, twisted by whatever force had been trapped here. The whispers grew louder, almost like chanting, and the shadows in the room began to move. We saw flickers of something tall and thin, its skin cracked and glowing like molten metal, its eyes smoldering like coals. But every time we focused on it, it was gone, like it was slipping in and out of our reality. The mirrors reflected not just us, but something standing just behind us. Shapes that shouldn't be there, shadows with eyes that burned with a hungry light. We opened fire out of instinct, but the bullets did nothing. The shadows only grew darker, twisting around us. The air turned blisteringly hot, and the whispering became a low, mocking laugh. It wasn't just trying to scare us, it was enjoying our fear. We had disturbed something ancient, something that thrived on terror and pain. Sergei was the first to break. He screamed, backing away, shouting prayers in Russian. I grabbed him and we ran, back up the stairs, through the twisting tunnel that now seemed endless, the walls pulsing with that sickly green light. The symbols were no longer static. They were writhing, shifting, like they were alive, like they were trying to keep something contained. We barely made it back to the surface. We slammed the door shut and sealed it as best we could, but even as we did, I could still hear the scratching from below, the desperate sound of something clawing to get out. We radioed for extraction, and when we got back to base, the brass didn't ask questions. They leveled the area with an airstrike, burying it under tons of rubble. But we all knew it wouldn't be enough. Whatever was down there, it's been waiting a long time, and now it knows there's a way out. Sergei wasn't the same after that. He'd spend hours staring into mirrors, his reflection not quite right. One night, I got a call from him. His voice was shaky, almost frantic. "It's not gone," he said. "I've been reading. My grandmother's stories, the old ones. It's an ifrit, a creature of fire born from smoke. It doesn't just kill, it consumes. It wants out, and it's following us. I could hear the fear in his voice, something that I'd never heard from Sergei before. It's been watching me, he continued. Every time I look in the mirror, it's closer. I see it more clearly now, my face, but twisted, grinning. It's not just watching anymore. It's becoming me. That was the last I heard from Sergei. He disappeared the next morning. His apartment was left in ruins, the mirrors shattered, and those same symbols were scrawled across the walls in what looked like blood. Now, some nights, I see a flicker of light in the corner of my eye, like a flame waiting to ignite. And when I look in the mirror, sometimes I see my own reflection smile back at me. A smile I didn't make. The eyes are too bright, too hungry, and each time I see it, the face gets a little closer to mine, a little more familiar. The Ifrit doesn't just kill, it becomes you. It takes your face, your voice, your life, until there's nothing left but a shadow of who you were, wearing your skin, living your life, waiting for its next victim. If you ever find yourself deep in the desert and the air turns cold, if you smell sulfur or hear whispers in a voice that seems almost familiar, run. Don't look back. Don't listen. Because if you do, it might already be too late. The fire is coming, and when it finds me, it will tear away what's left of my soul, slip into my skin, and wear my face like a mask. It will smile with my lips, speak with my voice, and hunt with my eyes. And the worst part? No one will know the difference until it's too late.